Good evening, everybody. Um, when we come to these screenings, it's about being interactive and it's about bringing our community together. So I wanted to just get us going, ready for our conversation that's going to happen after tonight. My name is Mena Fembo. I'll be your chair, host, and we're going to have a fantastic panel this evening after the film. We've got the assistant director, Anastasia Osei-Kuffour, and we've got the director, Stephen Williams, who's going to be joining us via Zoom after we've had the screening. Today, as part of Inspired, this is our last screening of the day. Inspired has been put on by Cables and Cameras, led by the amazing Gary Thompson. So shout out to Gary for putting on a brilliant day. And just because sometimes when we get into the conversation, we need to kind of finish quickly and get out quickly because the conversation is going. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of the team behind the scenes for supporting this event today, especially the camera, crew, social media. So give a round of applause to all of the team behind the scenes as well. For those that haven't been to Inspire before, it's really about connecting homegrown talent, again, bringing our filmmaking community together. So hopefully, like I said, we're going to have a great conversation. There's nothing more to be said from me other than to introduce the film, Chevalier, and let's have a great evening. Thank you. Let's get straight into our Q&A. So I want to just bring onto our screen, we've got Stephen Williams joining us from, I believe, Los Angeles. So Stephen, are you with us?
Yeah, how you doing?
Oh, maybe you're on mute. 2 years on, but still doing it. Yes. Welcome, Stephen. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. How is everybody doing?
How's everyone doing? Yeah. Can you see us, Stephen?
I can see you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You can see us. So there's thumbs up, there's claps going on. And then I also wanted to invite to join us on the stage Anastasia Osei-Kuffour, the assistant director. Give it up for Anastasia. Okay, let's get straight into it. That was absolutely beautiful. Stephen, congratulations. It was so beautiful to watch and to see that story brought to life. I think for me, I've been obviously doing some research and listening to some of the videos, and I know that I'm aware that you weren't aware of that story before you came on to direct this film. So I guess the first question to ask is, how did you become aware of the Chevalier, and what made you say yes, and how did you get onto this piece?
Yeah, I got the script, in the most traditional of ways. First off, hey, Anastasia, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm well. Good to see you. I opened my laptop one morning, and in my inbox was the script. It had been sent to me by Searchlight Pictures, and I started reading, and as you said, quite rightly, I knew nothing about Chevalier at all. Nothing about Joseph Bologne, and I was amazed that I had never heard of somebody so incredibly accomplished. And so that started, piqued my curiosity, and I started doing a deep dive into not only Joseph and his life, but the context in which he lived and worked, which is to say the run up to the revolution in France in the mid 1700s. And then the more I kind of learned about him, the more I started to see not only parallels between pre-revolutionary France and our present moment, right? A lot of the social ferment that was happening then felt really contemporary. It felt like it spoke to a lot of issues that we're dealing with right now. And then lastly, just on a personal level, like Joseph Bologne was born, as you saw in the film, in Guadeloupe, and went to Europe when he was really young, and I was born in another Caribbean island, namely Jamaica, and went to England when I was about 12, roughly the same age as Joseph, more or less. And, my kind of journey as an outsider, if you will, as an immigrant, as someone living on the margins of that society, felt familiar to me as I tracked the life journey of Joseph and his relationship to France, French culture, the court, high society, the world of Marie Antoinette, and tried to reconcile that with the world that he was reconnected to with, through his relationship with his mother. So for all those reasons, the movie felt like something that I was compelled to do.
Amazing. And there's so many things that you said that I want to just pick up on. But before we get to that, I just want to do, and before I come to you, Anastasia, I wanted to just do a temperature check as to who's in the room so we know who we're talking to. So just by show of hands, are there any writers in the room tonight? Any directors or filmmakers, crew? Okay, so there's a few people that are interested in that space. So Anastasia, come to you. How did you get on board with the project, assistant directing, and yeah, what made you also say yes?
Yeah, so I was basically talking with an amazing producer called Rachel, and I'd been wanting to learn more about filmmaking and develop my own filmmaking. And over the pandemic, we kept talking, and I told her that I would love to have the opportunity to get onto a film set, and get experience and learn more. And I said, please, Rachel, bear me in mind if anything comes up. And she did. And she contacted me when she moved to Element Pictures, who are one of the co-producers of this movie. And she put me forward to be Stephen's assistant. And then when I was contacted, I was like, this is a dream come true, because I wanted to get experience of being on a production at the level that this is, and sort of kind of know what it means to like get to the mountain before I do it myself, so to speak. So I kind of I met with Stephen and over Zoom, and was just really inspired by the man he is, and kind of what he was saying about the story, and what inspired him. And I was very excited, and he was like, why do you need this opportunity? I think you could just go out and just, be making stuff, and like you don't need this thing. And I was like, yes, I do need this experience, and I think I could learn a lot from you. And he was like, fine, you're gonna do certain things, but I will want you to tell me your thoughts on the script, and I will want you to kind of get involved, and let's have discussions about this production. And it was such an amazing experience doing this. Learned so much, and feel so blessed to be as involved as I was, which I think is really unusual. So yeah, dream come true.
Amazing. And so back to you, Stephen. I just wanted to ask, and just to use your words, Anastasia, before you kind of just go and, climb the mountain that it is. This is a mountain of a story. It's a story that I'd say it feels untold, as many of us may have not have heard of it before. There's obviously pockets of history around, and obviously, as we saw in the movie, a lot of the Chevalier's work has been destroyed. So when you're taking a historical figure that's kind of sort of erased, but is there, and we want to kind of bring it to the big screen, bring it to a mass audience. How do you balance, I guess, trying to bring the truth and the facts that we know of this story that happened a long time ago to a modern day audience and make it relevant?
Well, that's the $64 million question, which, by the way, is a multiple in excess of the resources that we had to make this movie. I think that the fact of the matter is that Joseph's life was so rich that it could fuel a half a dozen movies. Like, we don't set out to, in the course of the movie, do a kind of cradle to grave kind of Wikipedia page version of his life. Instead, I was kind of like anchored by two kind of moments in two kind of poles, if you will, in Joseph's life. One was, when he became Mena Chevalier, he gained entree to French society and became a close cohort of Marie Antoinette, right, the Queen. But then the other fact of his life is that when the revolution started in 1789, a lot of things had elapsed between that first moment and his first connection with Marie Antoinette, and Joseph leading a 1,000-man all-black battalion in the Revolutionary War aimed at unseating that very monarchy that he had previously been tight with, and ultimately resulted in the beheading of his ex-friend Marie Antoinette. And so I was like, well, something transformative had to have happened in Joseph's life in order for those two things to be true. And so I felt like the movie wanted to concentrate on what was that kind of journey of a musical virtuoso to becoming a revolutionary. And unfortunately, there's a lot, Joseph didn't leave any letters, no diary. There's not a lot that exists that's been written about him. And yet, weirdly, he's always been hiding in plain sight. As much as we say he's been erased, he's always been there, in the sense that it's a known historical fact that he was tight with Marie Antoinette. Mozart was aware of him. If you go back and look at Sofia Coppola's movie Maria Antoinette, you'll see that there is one tiny scene where there is a Black man sitting on a bench teaching her the harpsichord, which was the role that Joseph Bologne played in real life with Marie Antoinette. And yet he doesn't have a single line of dialogue in that movie. He just appears as a background performer. So, tasked with all of that, how do you tell that story? I tried to be guided. There's a great Tom Stoppard quote, right? Which is, facts are just facts, but the truth is something else entirely and is a product of the imagination. So I tried to imagine what it would be like to walk the walk that Joseph must have traversed in that period of his life. And so that's how we started. And then, it was just a huge undertaking beyond that.
Amazing.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense to me, and I think I echo what you say in terms of I'm watching it and I'm thinking this could be a Netflix or an Amazon or any other big streamer, series, multiple series, and there are so many, there are so many areas of Joseph's life that we could delve into and see, and I think the audiences today are here for it in a world of Bridgerton and those type of period stories being told in ways that definitely weren't around during my childhood and teenage years and so on. The audience is for them, it's the norm. So it definitely could have had so many more. So I definitely feel like you've answered that. I was just going to ask, just on picking up again on what Anastasia said around, wanting feedback on the script. And, it sounds like you're very collaborative in your approach as a director. And I want to know, how close did you work with the writer, Stephanie Robinson, and how much did I guess, what was the role in terms of that relationship and your freedom to create and imagine against the actual writer's vision of the story?
Yeah, I mean, Stephanie was, unlike me, Stephanie had been carrying this story inside her for a long time. She was introduced to Chevalier by her mother when she was a teenager, and so had long harbored the idea of telling his story and bringing his story to the screen. And so the screenplay that I got sent was a screenplay that she had written entirely on her own and taken to Searchlight, and Searchlight was intrigued and thrilled by it. And when it came to me, for all kinds of reasons, partly because it's important, I think, for every director to kind of personalize the work that they're ultimately going to visualize, but also just boring things like budgetary issues and how many days we had to shoot. We had to kind of roll our sleeves up, Stephanie and I, and try to fashion a version of the script in a way that rendered it producible. And so we worked very closely together in trying to kind of try to do that. And for all my input, I was also very much aware that I was trying to be a conveyor of her initial impulse and respectful and honor her initial impulse in telling the story and trying to bring the story that she wanted to tell to the screen in a way that I thought I could be additive to that process. So it was a very collaborative relationship, and it was great. She's an amazing talent.
Fantastic. Anastasia, you're a director in your own right. On this role, obviously in this film, you're assistant director to Stephen, and you said one of the things that really appealed to you was the fact that you could learn about, working on a project of this scale. So are there any moments that you feel that, or any scenes or moments that you feel that you really learned something from Stephen in terms of whether you're in terms of inspired or style or the way that those scenes have been brought to life that you want to share?
Yes, there's a lot. There's a lot in this movie.
Pick one for us.
I think one of my favorite, because we spent quite a lot of time planning it, is the Ernestine montage, and that's the montage where Joseph is planning for his opera that is part of the competition to become the musical director, and it starts with the back of his love interest, who is preparing for the performance, and then it kind of ends with the performance in front of the old men, and I just remember us meticulously planning it, thinking about the music and how we could get it to the timing of the music, and that was just an amazing team. So I was just watching Jess Hall, Jeff Haley, Stephen, we met in one of the apartments and just trying to work out how that sequence would flow and the best way, and kind of how we would move so seamlessly. When you look at it, it's gorgeous, filmmaking, because you go from the back of one person and it goes into into the next bit of the story, and then you get really clearly that time has passed and their love has grown at the same time as the opera has been prepared, and we've arrived at D-Day for the opera that he's making. So I think it's just gorgeous, and every time I see it, I'm analysing it all over again and just marveling at it and remembering the time that was spent over working that out. So yeah, that was one of my favourite parts.
I think it's stunning, in terms of obviously the costume, the cinematography, the style. You can feel it all coming through. I think we need to talk about the music, and then I'm going to throw it out to the audience. We have to talk about, obviously, Joseph's music, and I guess my question first and foremost is is that original music? I didn't obviously read every single credit. How much of it is original music or original composition versus made up now? And I guess for the purists in the sort of the violinist world, are they gonna be happy with the lead actor? I've got his name down here, but yeah, in terms of how he's portraying being a violinist, are you happy? Tell us about that. How you got him to that space?
Well, I'm going to start at the end, and I'm going to paraphrase Bob Marley to know not even remotely to Anastasia's surprise, because she knows that I am guided in all things by the essence of Mr. Marley. But you can please some of the people some of the time, can't please all the people all the time. So maybe, I don't know about the purists, that's for them. We worked really hard. There's a lot of Joseph Bologne original composition in the movie, various sequences, like when he goes to that extended sequence with, when he and Marie Antoinette go to that ball, and he meets La Guimard and Christophe Gluck and all that. That's all Chevalier music, one concerto after another. The Ernestine piece is all Chevalier compositions. We had two amazing composers, Michael Abels, who did, movies like Get Out and Nope and Us, and Chris Abels, who did, The Green Book and King Richard, among other things, and Bridgerton, I believe, the first season anyway. And they're just both of them are just amazing, and both of them are huge Chevalier fans. And so we either had complete pieces of Chevalier's music as composed and then, re-performed and re-recorded, and we're fortunate enough to be at Abbey Road with a whole orchestra re-recording his music, or they took fragments of pieces of Joseph Bologne compositions and then extrapolated, built on that, in hopefully in the same idiom that Joseph might have written those pieces. And so we were really mindful of trying to include as much Chevalier music in the piece as we possibly could.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to throw it open to our audience because I'm sure there are lots of questions that we have. So feel free to ask away. I've got one at the back.
Give me 1 second.
Thank you. You know, yeah, it's on. Do you know with his love interest and how he had that baby with the woman, and obviously it got killed. Like in the end, did they get together or anything like that, or?
No, they did not. Joseph Bologne died unmarried and childless at 53 in the shadow of the opera house, and for the reasons that are in the movie.
So was
Sorry
it like
to be a downer?
Was it was it to just do with like obviously they couldn't marry like different races at the time and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's that section where in the theater where he encounters Marie Josephine, and he explains the price that he would have to pay depending on the choice of partner that he made, right, as based on the kind of laws of the land at the time. And I think it's one of the saddest parts of his story in real life, because he obviously had the desire to find a partner. He obviously had the desire to have a child and a family of his own, and because of that, the pressure of the times, he was not, that was a dream that he died not having realized. And so yeah, it's a casualty of the times, I think.
Thank you. And there's one down at the front.
I could see that there were so many challenges in terms of what you include, what you leave out. I thought the relationship with the mother was really powerful, and how you, I think, was also trying to encapsulate the life of someone displaced, the person with dual heritage in that context, and also how to build his reconciliation with his African past and so on. I guess the challenge, and what I wanted to know from you both, is what was the toughest thing, what was the toughest story arc to say we can't do in this story? What was the thing that you think, ouch, there's so much here, but in considering what you were saying earlier about the two poles that you had to cover, and I can see the multiple relationships and dynamics that you did manage to explore and give us a feeling for. What were perhaps the challenges? Is what do you leave in, what do you leave out, and what was the thing that really kind of hurt?
Anastasia, you want to go?
I was going to leave that to you. I know that I wouldn't say like a story arc, but I remember some things that are not in there that we were thinking of, which is like, he is amazing, but like he's actually historically more amazing than what is presented in the film, because he was a man of actually many talents, and we just couldn't get it in there, like his horse riding, like his like swimming, like we just couldn't get it in there. But he like, when you read about him and the things that he was able to do and what people say about him, he's actually a remarkable person, and we don't get to hear much about this kind of person living in those times. But yeah, go Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. I agree with that. But I also, I mean, maybe I would just key off the question, and thank you for your question. One of my favorite parts in the movie is arguably one of the most underserved parts of the movie, which is to say his relationship with his mother. And his mother is played by Ronke Adekunle, who's an amazing actor, English actor. And she's just incredible. And she just, through the sheer kind of her brilliance, she expanded that role beyond, you know, what exists on the page and what we were able to photograph. And that relationship with his mother is very close to me. I lost my mother in November of this year, November 20th, and I was thinking about her the whole time that we were shooting the movie, because the portrayal of Nanon, Joseph's mother in the movie, is very close to how I experienced my mother. Endlessly patient, loving, waiting for me to, guiding me and waiting for me to see more clearly and, you know, make my way back to her. And so that part of the story I would have loved to have been able to develop more.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add, I think it was a brilliant question, Edson, but I wanted to add, like, for me, I felt like the mother, you know, obviously we could have developed the whole story so much more, but what she gave was amazing. Do you know what I mean? And you feel it with every scene that she's in. It's beautiful. So yeah, it came through. More questions? Yeah, we've got one down the front. Oh yeah, we go to the blue, the hat, and then the red shirt.
Thank you very much. That was really, really beautiful. I just wanted to ask, so obviously cinema is a visual art as well as his background is music, but I noticed there were some moments which looked like it was created like an old painting. Did you look at old paintings of the time and try to recreate that texture in a film?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, one of the blessings of being able to, I think I need to, you know, be transparent with you all and say that I feel like in our industry, for better and sometimes for worse, directors get way more credit than they deserve. And I include myself in that category. Part of the thrill and the joy of being the steward of a story is that you get to collaborate with people who are, in many cases, way more talented than you are. And one of those people was Jess Hall, our DP, who is just an artist. He happens to also, like me, be Jamaican. So, you know, take that for what you will. I didn't know that until after I met him.
And he's also British. He's also British.
Yeah, exactly. And our production designer, Karen Murphy, and she's amazing. I mean, she's just the word genius is bandied around a lot, but she's a genius, in my opinion. And together, you know, collectively, we all were inspired by artwork and lighting design, and the fact that, you know, we were telling a story that unfolded pre-electricity, and how were we going to render that, and how are we going to visualize that, and how are we going to compose certain frames. And you know, Jess and Karen were, and Oliver, our costume designer, they all worked as a multi-headed hydra, and they were inspired by art pieces of the time and props and costumes and furnishings and all of the accoutrement of that time period. And so I will be thrilled to pass on to them that their work was not in vain, at least as far as you're concerned.
Great question, thank you. And down the front.
Hello. Sorry, my voice is a bit strange this evening. I just wanted to say that was truly magnificent. I hope that's not patronizing, but I just really feel on a high, because I came here on a whim, mainly because I'm reading a book about the history of France, and my whims don't usually hit home. This was a real jackpot for me. I wanted to know something about the history. There are a few references to England at that time, and I would be interested to know whether you have a sense of how far Joseph would have got in English society had someone of his musical brilliance been around in the court of England at that time. And also maybe one last question about, I think abolition arrived in England in the 1830s. when did that happen in France?
Okay, great question, and thank you for your kind words. You're never patronizing when you say lovely things about the film. I can never have enough of that. Um, so, in terms of the history, I don't know. I can't speculate as to what Joseph's trajectory would have been had he spent more time in England, but I can tell you that my sense of things, as I'm sure it is yours to be presumptuous, is that the French at the time experienced themselves, there's Voltaire, there's Montaigne, there's Rousseau, there's all these people talking about the rights of man and exploring that kind of ethos in a way that allowed the French to occupy this kind of, to indulge in a broad generalization. It allowed the French at the time to indulge in this kind of notion about themselves that they were not as onerous in their view of cultures and races as other places. There's a big difference, and we spend a lot of time kind of explaining things on my side of the Atlantic, because France, like England, but probably even more so, didn't have slavery, as I understand it, per se in French territory, meaning the Principality of France. It was confined largely or mostly to the colonies, whereas here in America, slavery was on this, in this country, and is consequently inextricable from in ways that are very unique and specific to America. And so I just think that the French kind of vibe was we're different. And once you come to France, there were rules under which you could come to France. You could come to France, you could bring a person of African descent from the colonies, if you were French, to France, if you were inculcating them in Catholicism, or B, teaching them a trade. And a lot of people of means did that in order to have Black people working for them in France. I do know that the abolition movement was in its nascent stages in mid 1700s, and that Joseph, mid to late 1700s, and that Joseph was taken over to England by Philippe and started to hang out with abolitionists and to go to abolitionist meetings, and I believe that is the roots of his kind of cracking open his awareness around the common need for him to agitate, not just for himself as a solo player, as somebody who could ascend as an individual in French society, but to make a connection between the larger kind of African diaspora of which he was a part. To refer to that gentleman's earlier question, that's another part of the story that I wish we could have spent more time really fleshing out. But unfortunately, we were we tried to acknowledge it and nod to it and indicate it without having the resources to fully kind of explore it. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to just touch on, we have to talk about Kelvin in the role, and I think just talk a little bit about the fact, for me, the themes, there's so many themes that come up, but one of the things that are kind of standing out for me was this theme around competition, masculinity, and this kind of bravado, ego, a bit of naivety, which I find really annoying. Do you know what I mean? Because it's just typical.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you have this beautiful contrast with the vulnerability as he grows, and the scenes with his mother doing his hair and leaving the wig behind. And for me, this idea of, you always see that kind of story happen with a Black woman, for example, leaving her wig behind and going natural. And whilst it wasn't a very explicit, verbalized scene, just seeing it play out, knowing where it was going to go, but also enjoying that that's where it went, was really lovely to see in sort of in a male sort of I guess body. But I guess thinking about Kelvin, I guess tell us a little bit about what he brought to life in terms of Joseph and his own experiences. Did he bring those to the character and the conflict that Joseph would have been through?
Yeah, I mean, Kelvin, for me, just delivers a great performance. I could not be prouder of the work that he does in this movie. And in part, I think, both his parents, as it happens, are really accomplished jazz musicians in America, in New Orleans, in America. And so he brought an understanding of a kind of intuitive and an osmotically absorbed understanding of what it's the life of a musician, which is something intangible. You can feel it when you see it, even if you can't exactly articulate what its constituent parts are. And then, beyond that, he just kind of understood that the way in which I wanted to shoot the movie, I feel like, you guys as audiences are altogether too sophisticated. And so if I shot the movie in a way that had shorter takes and more editing, so as to facilitate the use of a stunt double, I feel like it would have been had a distancing effect, which is exactly the opposite of the effect the immersive effect I was trying to create. And so I needed to have somebody who was going to learn how to play the violin. And Kelvin worked like 6 hours a day, 6 months before we started shooting, so that everything you see in the movie is all Kelvin. Like there was no stunt double at all for Kelvin, or for playing the violin, or for fencing for that matter. And so that all of that, kind of were tributaries into flowing into the decision around casting him. And then, in terms of the hair, I think that was just like a really important way to say a lot of things, but visually, as you quite rightly noted, without a lot of words. And so it kind of speaks for itself, I think.
Fantastic. We've got time for one more question. Going once, twice, 3 times to Edson in the red.
Only if there's nobody else.
Take it away.
Oh, okay. I was really wondered whether it's just a natural coincidence, but I guess there was a strong sense of coming against authorities, centralized authorities, when it's a monarchy and established power. Also a complex view of whiteness in that. How much was this inspired by, reflective of the Black Lives Matter moment? I know the script has been around for a long time, but it felt that there was a resonance there, Bristol being the city of the toppling, but actually so many of the people involved in that protest were white friends, allies, comrades, so on and so on, skin in the game.
Yeah, I mean, all of that was in there. I mean, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier when I was saying that the more I kind of studied and familiarized myself with the transformation that was gripping and overtaking French society in the run-up to 1789, the start of the French Revolution, the more I was like, the French have this amazing expression, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose, right? Which, despite my terrible pronunciation, means the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I was just like struck at every turn of my exploration into the context, the sociocultural context that Joseph was making, carving his path with our present moment. And so we wanted to kind of fold an awareness into the tapestry of the movie as well, because it just felt like sometimes you can see your present moment better if you look at it through the lens of some distance.
Great. Thank you so much. Closing questions. Anastasia, I come to you first. What's next?
Oh, wow. I think I'm just continuing my filmmaking journey and kind of trying to put all that I've learned into my own films. So yeah, I'm working on that, cooking some things up, writing some things. So yeah.
Amazing. And what's been your biggest takeaway?
I think what was amazing was on a project at this level, which I hadn't been on before, it was an amazing experience meeting Stephen. And what was amazing was I came away feeling like I can do it, because he gave me a lot of encouragement and respect, like in front of like the whole team and like executives, you know, with lots of power. And I just think that as a people, as black people, I feel like there's a lot of power in bringing each other up and supporting each other. And I just can't tell you how like what it did for my confidence to know that Stephen believed that I had a voice and that the things that I was saying had merit, and to give me space to be able to speak and to get involved and to learn that way instead of being an observer. It's amazing, and I think there's key roles for everyone to play, whatever race, but in the film industry, to bring up people who are underrepresented in all roles.
Homegrown talent. Thank you, Anastasia. And Stephen, obviously the film is premiering. This is our preview. It's officially coming out in the UK or in the Watershed on Friday the 9th. So I'm assuming you're doing a big festival run and screenings and talks, but are you working on anything that you can tell us about, or what's next for you?
I'm kind of, I can't, there's nothing that I'm ready to talk about just yet. I'm just, reading lots of stuff and trying to decide and figure out making a film is such a huge commitment. And, I have a family that's the most important aspect of my life. And I, try to build everything I do around that. So that takes a bit of figuring. And, you want to make sure that, we've been working on this movie for like 3 years. So you want to make sure when you are making that kind of commitment that it's something that can sustain that level of input, and energy. I would rather take the time to kind of, I feel like I have to acknowledge with gratitude and appreciation everything that Anastasia said about her working experience. But I want to also say that Anastasia made it incredibly easy to be as collaborative with her as I was, because she brought so much to the table. She was so committed, so hardworking, so dedicated, so focused, so perceptive. And truly, the movie would not be the movie it is without her contribution. And so she made it incredibly easy to collaborate with her. And I can only, wholeheartedly endorse all her endeavors in terms of making her own movie, because I'm dying to see that movie. I know it'll be great and it'll be unique and it'll be specific to her point of view. So I just think that the lesson for me is, just keep the door open, because everyone has something to contribute, and Anastasia specifically had so much to contribute. And so thanks again, Anastasia. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
That's really great, and it's really beautiful to see true collaboration play out. Obviously during the movie and obviously post the movie, and us celebrating each other, especially the film industry needs to be collaborative. We can't do anything on our own. I just wanted to go back to the movie just to finish, and 3 years of commitment. We know that as directors, producers, whatever role we're playing, we're dedicating so much of our time and energy into this, and as you said, it has to sustain us. So for you, what is it that, in terms of your role in bringing this story to life, what is it that you really, really want audiences to leave with when they see this movie?
Well, we've got to finish with Bob. So this journey, when you look at it closely, it's both a specific story about Chevalier, but it's a general story. It's a universal story. And the story is about coming into a greater sense of self-awareness and sense of understanding of your role and who you are, who your roots are, what your foundation is, what the kind of idea you want to be in the world. And so it's about emancipating yourself from mental slavery, because none but ourselves can free our minds. To me, that is the journey that Chevalier's life stands as a beacon to reflect. And that's the version of his story I was interested in telling, as opposed to, a black music biopic like Amadeus. That Amadeus has different work to do. This movie was trying to be about that notion of, you know, coming into self-awareness and self-understanding and self-realization, self-actualization, which is what I think actually happened in his life.
Amazing. Everybody, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. Anastasia, Osei-Kuffour, Stephen Williams, this has been Chevalier, and this has been Inspired. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you so much for coming out. Appreciate it.
I think that's our show.
That's
Unless
it. Yeah,
Maddie, you'd like to
please
say anything.
just please tell everybody the film is opening on the 9th at Watershed. We hope to get an audience for it. And thank you so much, Mena, for hosting tonight. It's been great. And thank you to Disney as well for allowing us to have this very special preview. And thank you, the audience, for being here.